Hey, welcome everyone. My name's Kevin Gallagher. I'm the editor and publisher of spoKe, a Boston area journal of poetry and poetics, and I'm super pumped to be here for our 10th issue in our 10th year, and super glad to be here at the Grolier. Great to have everyone out there in the Zoom space. We founded the journal 10 years ago, right after the Boston bombings, and felt like we just needed to contribute to the culture of the town. And what better way to do it through poetry? We've had sort of three tenets that I'll read to you, which is sort of the scope that we look through to try to find work that can fit into one of these or three spaces or all three of them at the same time. A global poetry that engages with or is from the world's places, cultures, and literary traditions, past, present, and visions of futures. Two, an American poetry that sees the English language and literary tradition as core, but only one of many routes and paths for poetry. And three, a poetics that attempts to innovate language, idiom, sensibility, and poetic form while maintaining a public presence. We also see ourselves in a major Boston tradition of incredible literary magazines that have just been parading through this town for centuries, but especially some in the New American poetry tradition, like Measure, like Lift, like Compost, like there's just been hundreds. But the one that I think that we've taken the most inspiration on, which to me is probably the best one ever out of this city, is called Origin by Sid Corman. Sid Corman is probably one of the most underappreciated and probably most influential modern poet of Boston in our history. Not only for his work that is underappreciated, but for the work of people that he helped us discover that have changed the face of world poetry. And one of the things that he did in his magazine Origin is that instead of doing hundreds of poets and 3 or 4 little poems by each person, that he would just do big, huge chunks of folks so you could really understand and digest where somebody's coming from. And so in his first issue, he published like a third of the Maximus poems. And the second one, he sort of introduced the world to Robert Creeley, and then on and on and on. And that's what we've tried to do here. And this one's a fat one, but there's only 7 or 8 contributors, although there's a secret section with more that you'll hear about. And in each section, we've tried to do that along those three. In each issue, we try to do that along those 3 different things. And so we often, almost every time, have want to make sure that we have something in the classical tradition, not just the Western classical tradition. This time we've had Greek and Latin poets, but ancient Chinese poetry by Chloe Garcia Roberts, and have tried to have something in the ancient translated tradition, but then also contemporary work that is around the world right now. And in this issue, a woman named Tiffany Higgins has some great translations, about 40 pages, of indigenous women from the Amazon and from indigenous parts of Brazil. And we've done women poets from Uruguay, Chinese poets, Korean poets. So we try to get a picture of what's going on outside of our language, but to bring it into our language. And I also always make sure that I want to have celebrate us, because we're doing it right here in our city, and we've got a long tradition, and we are totally keeping it alive here and making a major contribution to our own culture here in town and to the world. And that's what we try to curate every time. And I didn't know we'd be doing this for 10 years and we'd have 10 issues. So here are the first 4 up here. First one, we did a big feature with Fanny Howe and Damon Krakowski. In the second one, that was Uruguayan poets and Lucretius. The third one is a huge issue on John Brooks Wheelwright, probably one of the most unsung Boston poets, the one that John Ashbery said is the only American poet that has done anything beyond Eliot and Pound. We celebrated Bunny Lang in 4. 5 is Larry, and there's a great new book that is that is reviewed in here, in the new issue, that's of the first biography of him by Jennifer Bartlett, who's moved back to the region for a while. And then Sam Cornish, the late Sam Cornish, we celebrated him. And then, of course, how could I not mention Ifeanyi here in this space? We did a whole feature on his work. Delmar Schwartz, who had a big Boston event, in his life, and I think he's going to be re-celebrated here because there's two new big books coming out. Mad Hat Press is coming out with the big essays about him, and Faber and what's their American version? The Farah FSG is coming out with their collected by a Boston poet named Ben Mazur. And in the last issue, we celebrated Ed Bolins. Ed Bolins, folks don't, he's obviously world famous. He won a couple Tonys and a Pulitzer, but he's most known for his like Oakland and New York spaces. Oakland when he was the Minister of Culture for the Black Panthers, and in New York when he was one of the core people, part of the Black Arts movement, and the person who August Wilson says is the reason why August Wilson wrote his plays. But he actually lived in Boston longer than anywhere else in his adult life. He moved here in 1992 and just passed away during COVID a couple of years ago. So we've got some unpublished plays by him in spoKe and a whole bunch of essays. And in this issue with DLG here, we did a big event to celebrate him as part of the rollout of spoKe in Roxbury last year. And a woman named Barbara Lewis from UMass Boston gave a great delivery at that event. And so we published that in this issue too. We are doing, outside of today, we're doing one more event, or at least one more event. I feel like since it's the 10th anniversary, I'm going to try to do a bunch of gigs over the course of the year. The first couple are just going to be about spoKe 10. We did one at Michael Franco's on February 25th. We're here today. And on April 6th, we're going to do one on Lit Bomb. It's going to be a Zoom one. And we're going to feature a couple other folks that are in this issue that obviously can't be here today. They're not Bostonians. One of them is Robert Kelly, who probably does not need much of an introduction. And Charlotte Mondell has done these incredible translations that we have in here of Sabin Hui. She's a Vietnamese poet. And we'll also have Tiffany Higgins reading her English translations alongside some of the women from the Amazon, if we can really beam them in through Zoom. I've tried to talk to them a few times, and obviously the connection's not so great. So hope you can be part of all that stuff. We've got a webpage called spokeboston.com, and you can see what we have, order what we have. And but today we want to celebrate some of the people who are in the issue and actually live in the area and have some great stuff to share with us today. The first poet, if I could introduce, is Cheryl Clark Vermeulen. She's a poet, editor, translator, and educator. She's the author of a great book of poetry from 2022 called They Can Take It Out, and chapbooks The Paper Lantern and Deadeye Spring from Sigist, a good friend of our family here. Her poems have been all over the place. She's got an MFA from Iowa. She's the poetry editor of Pangyris Literary Magazine. Oh, so that's why you know her. And she works at, she's a poet and professor at MASS Cheryl Clark Vermeulen.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be in this edition and to celebrate spoKe. I'm gonna read just 2 pages from this book. They can take it out because there's copies here if you're interested. And hello, people in Zoom land. So this book is about a lot of things being extracted from the body, and also coming to terms with there's some trying to have a child and then not knowing if that was going to happen, and deciding like maybe art will just be my baby. So that's sort of another through line through the book. But this section is really a first encounter with becoming a very medicalized subject and having never even really had broken a bone before. This is from a long poem called Thyroid and Other Matters. It's about 20 pages in the book. These are just 2 pages from it. Growth. To prepare, give your throat. Practice edge. Learn elephants and rams are throat animals. Learn blue governs the throat. Hand over your blue card. Flapping loose around a medical moon, you are with numerous nurses. One says the itchy soreness can be worse than pain. No, you didn't skip the hospital. Shuffling in non-slip booties like little welcome mats, you glance a red rope around your neck, a managed savagery. Do not throw up on the mirror. Take yourself back as cure, heal, and cope assume their places on the floor. Porcelain, white tiles, being all slippery. But each dose precise. Is this the new body? Someone repeats, you're strong, someone else. King Ram and Queen Elephant walk in during rounds and lumber over your body, then slip out before the phlebotomist, 20 foot tall and laughing, leaves with your blood. No, you didn't skip. For everyone you meet, have a bevy of questions. Go along looking for the ward, asking kings and queens, what gives? Are the palmists through here? The children's hospital next door, you repeat, has full-time clowns. Awake after surgery, attached to a cherry pit, kicked into rolling. Far away, the trees, post-soak, drip dry. Until insurance sends her home. 2 phone calls. An automatic man message saying her hormones are ready for pickup. The surgeon tells her they took out some lymph nodes when they went in there. I didn't know you were going to take out those too. He assures her that they are numerous. I'm a big George Oppen fan, so On Being Numerous is like one of the most amazing poems, books to me. So I squeezed in numerous twice in there, if you notice. Little things, that please us as poets that nobody else really needs to know about. I don't know if my kids are watching. They said that they might. So if so, I have to say hi, Rigel and Corbin. I love you. Okay, and these are some poems in spoke. Autobiography reaches for mother. The coast is no longer a closet of snow with a long arm where the body used to be, gnawing at the unfinished shape of everywhere, protecting silences as she, beset with furious gems beneath her coat, has dropped something along the way, who I am, who is not me. Humming in the accidental. Graham, but not mom, mothered with hums. A cardinal sighting could interrupt it. Cardinal, look. Humming, I too relax my mothering, though the crows demand a response. My children know this and follow suit, vocal folds to syrinx. We let our accidents meet, loosen our forms, instruments lapped into a hum, mothering another hum, a lake would love. In small vibrations, sailing through contingencies and toxicities on glugs and glances, savoring and sorting non-negotiables, mine, theirs. Institutions do not love us. Our lips birded. We can build a house in a hum. My grandmother lived to 104 and a half. She was trying to beat her sister a little bit later, and she hummed a lot. I miss it. Okay, this is called some Boston poems in here. My buying self goes to the library. After the Boston Public Library circa 2015-16, when they did a bunch of renovations. On the first floor, the long tables are gone, replaced with computer carols. A tad lost, like a fruit fly on gristle. I bet, though, there's less screaming about across full family-sized tables, causing a guard to tap someone's shoulder for saying, "Stop looking at me, dick, bitch." Usually one of those. Then the longest pause. The guards may no longer tap. A touch could explode inside a cubicle. Most are typing big plans, or so it looks, thickly invented jams bursting row after row from that far privacy. Goodbye, long tables, with your scrumptious spread of offerings, my book near yours, next to others left to relish at the shared dignity of appetizers. Yes, I'll return. And when buying books only feeds my buying self, I'll go on borrowing. Poetry is in nonfiction. On the first floor is the new. Next up, the mezzanine. I really do. Every time I go to the library, when I realize poetry is in nonfiction section, I'm always like, discombobulated. Okay, this is going back way in time. I was a goth girl, like in high school. This is called Goths at a Cemetery. It's dark, 9 or 10 p.m. We were far into the woods when the cops arrived. I was down in the tomb, hiding liquor in a candelabra, my nylons ripped into the best spider webs. Hearing far-off stadium cheers, they asked, guns slung to their sides, "Why aren't you at the football game?" We hid our disgust. We're calling now. I got nothing more than our whiteness. In the middle of the night, in those dark woods, those guns just slung to their sides. I'm here and there, keep going back to, writing about race, racism, whiteness. And so that was a little piece of it. And this is another poem called The Protest at the City's Tree Lighting Ceremony, which was also around the same time for Boston, 2014. I show up the protest because I cannot. It takes a few blocks for I to weave into we. Once cut, the tree wears those lit teeth. There are steel barricades around the tree. Block by block, we are shouting, demanding, Eric Gardner, Michael Brown, shut this racist system down. To be immersed in full belief, letting it reverberate in my white body. Struck, we repeat what bears repeating, Black Lives Matter. A family is gathered at their window 10 floors up, 2 grown-ups, 2 kids huddled together. I want to blow them a kiss. Allow free passage of the love also emanating from these streets. We walk in mass, and the roads widen and crisscross, multiplying. Yes, it seems that we are headed to the interstate to block it. Police and riot gear are filing out of 3 city buses, shields for eons, a tactical upper hand. They all know the plan and the chokehold. But we are snaking fast, and my friend and I deciding risk, swerve out, asking each other, what will you do next? What can we carry? Yeah, I've been to many protests and I had never seen that many buses and that many police officers and riot gear for that. Okay, this one, I think 2 small ones. TV intimacy. Falling for Pretenders Chrissy Hind on the cover of my brother's Spin progressed when she wore that red bath sponge on her head at the VH1 Fashion Awards. What a bright poof. How sad it would have been if I had missed the provocateur's love, that progressive music. My gangliness may have never recovered. I scissored my legs along with hers. She's saying, I'm going to make you notice me, luring us to the height of her grand vessel. exfoliating all the drab norms we could. This last small one, turning into a mother. What milk I had was theirs. Too soon they could name my flaws, how I languished in them. I helped them spell, sounding out one vowel, loosening into another in a diphthong, saying fault. Do you feel the shape of your mouth changing? Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, great poem, Cheryl. Next, we're gonna have Mike Juster. As I said, I always try to feature some classical or some older poetry, not older poets. And I first discovered him like Columbus in area, and then found out, I think maybe through Wendy, that I live in Belmont, and the Belmont Library discovered Poetry Month and brought us all together at the library, and found out that this guy that I've been reading his stuff for a while lives in the same town. And I asked him for what he's working on. He does a lot of stuff. He's the poetry editor for Plough. His poems and translations have been in Poetry, Hudson Review, Paris Review. This might be dated. When you sent this to me last year before I published this, you said your most recent book is Wonder and Wrath. But is that the one that's up there? Oh, it is. Yeah, his book up there is called Wonder and Wrath. And Norton is going to publish his translations of Petrarch next year, but that probably means this year at this point.
Yeah.
2024.
I don't.
Mike Juster, thanks.
Well, first of all, thank you to Kevin. There aren't very many editors when you say, hey, I've got a deal for you. I've got a 677 Old English poem that I'd like you to publish. And they say, oh, great. So don't tell them that. So I'm only going to read the first 500 lines. No, I'm going to read the first 27. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a few other translations and then read some of my own poems that have been influenced by those translations. And this is an anonymous Old English poem, although I have a guess who wrote it, called The Phoenix. And it's a rebuttal in certain ways to the first successful Christian poem, post-classical. A lot of the early poets struggled with the classical overhang. And there's a wonderful poem by Lactantius on the Phoenix that's a reworking of Ovid's section in the Metamorphoses about the Phoenix. This Old English poet wasn't very happy with that translation. So this in some ways is kind of a rebuttal, but I can't go into everything that's there. But what I do love is it has these marvelous rhythms, tactile feel. This is different from a lot of Old English poems in that there are sections that rhyme, and I've made them rhyme where they rhyme. And there's a section in the end where Latin interweaves with the Old English. So it's an extraordinary poem in lots of ways. I've heard it as far away from here in the eastern reaches of the noblest realms, well known to many. Across Middle-earth, part of the region is past the reach of the Lord of lands, but walled off as well from sinning people by sacred power. The plain is beautiful, blessed with bliss, with the finest fragrances found on earth. The island is unique. The noble creator who molded its dirt is mighty yet measured. Happy harmonies are there for the holy at the always open gate of heaven. A pleasant place, a grove of green beneath spacious sky. No rain or snow, no breath of frost, no fiery blast, no harm from hail, no hoary gale, no fevered sun, no frigid run, no humid weather nor wintry shower is doing damage. And grasslands stretch on, blessed and unscathed. So I've written a couple poems in this type of meter. The first one's called Three Visitors on Christmas Eve. Mist on moonspill as midnight nears. Adrift but not dreaming, our drowsy sun is covered and kissed. At the kitchen door, our basset is barking. Out back, coyotes are standing like statues down by the dogwoods. Across the crystal of crusted snow, they search for stragglers who startle and run. Their vigil reveals no victims this night. Trash would be trouble. They trot away, unbothered by blood-throated baying and growling. No star distracts their stealthy march. The highway hums. They howl through the calm, then savor new scents that spice their path in this world awash in wonder and wrath. The next one, there may be a couple of you here. There was a wonderful local poet named David Berman, the less famous of the two David Berman poets, who was a classic formalist love form. This poem is a tribute to David, and it is written in Old English, alliterative meter. It's a sonnet, it's a litany, and it's an elegy. And I think he would have gotten an enormous kick out of it, although I'm sure he would have been unhappy with certain aspects of it, but that's okay. After scattering David Berman's ashes, worker of words, maker of meter, lover of lines and mercy and law, reconciler of rhythms and rules, defender of faith, doubter of God, wanderer once in a riven south, Brahmin by will, not birth or wealth, friend and counselor of force and court, champion of clarity, classics and charity, late in life, a braver of love, a father adopted by daughters and sons, apologizer for politics and puns, eye twinkler near wine or wit, scavenger of insight in poetry and prose, heart that would rise when an aria rose. So I also should just say what an enormous kick it is for me being here at the Grolier. I was a little feral as a teenager. My mom was in the hospital for long stretches of time. So I first came here, I think I was trying to remember with James, I was probably 13 in 1970. And the first book I ever bought anywhere was right here. There's a wonderful post-classical poet called Ausonius who wrote this wild poem where he's trying to look at a painting of Echo. And of course, Echo is supposed to be invisible. So it's sort of difficult to begin with. And then what makes it a little trickier is that Echo, who's just a voice, starts heckling the poet. I've always loved it. Foolish artist, why must you sketch my face and hound a goddess eyes cannot detect? I am the daughter born of speech and space, Babel's mother, a voiceless intellect. I snatch a word before it disappears, then mimic mindlessly what I have found. I am Echo, I live within your ears. If you believe you can paint me, paint sound. And that, oops, I'm not locked there a minute. Note from Echo. Narcissus, I no longer haunt the canyons and the crypts. I thrive and multiply. Uncounted daughters are my new companions. We are the voicemail's ponderous reply to the computers making random calls. We are the Muzak in the empty malls, the laugh track on the rerun late at night, the distant sirens chilling lullaby, the steady chirp of things that simplify their scheduled lives. You know I could recite more, but you never cared for my recitals. I do not miss you, do not need you here. I can repeat the words of your disciples, telling lovers what they need to hear. I love fragments and trying to figure out where a poet was going. The most recent book is actually Gorides. I'm glad it's here. And it's an attempt to recreate an Aristophanes comedy from the secondary quotations and comments in other books, because we don't have the manuscript itself, and it was great fun. And I started doing that actually with Rilke, who wrote about 300 pages of French poetry, which a lot of people don't realize, and it has a very different texture from the German. The German is very tightly packed, and the French is very chiffon-like, and I have this image of Rilke really feeling liberated, by it. but he didn't finish a lot of them. So I did him a favor and decided to finish them. So what I'm going to do is the beginning is always a translation. So it's the good stuff. It's the Rilke. And I'll keep my hand up like this when I'm doing Rilke. And then when you have to suffer through me, I'll just move the hand down. And they're short, so it doesn't matter. The gods, recalcitrants who live in contradictions, frauds who lie about what sins they must forgive, which joys they must deny. What peculiar passion transforms this large number of things as they slumber into words that fashion a silence of flowers, with roots that do not tire, but bequeath desire in still perfect hours? Is it the gods in flight who make the sun resound, or is it human sight where glory can be found? And this poem really is probably more inspired by the German. Rilkean checklist. Jettison the life you led, stare down demons that you dread, find graves, come clean with your dead, never leave love unsaid, rapture could be just ahead. So one of the more fun projects I've ever done, I spent over 20 years off and on taking the only person ever to take the relevant book out of the library across the street. And it's a book of East African proverbs from a language called Oromo. And to show how long I worked on it, when I first started on it, it was just an oral language. It was not written. By the time I finished, it was a pretty active, written language. There's a collection of about 4,000 proverbs, and about half of them are in strong rhythm and rhyme. And so I spent a long time picking out which ones and how to do them and that kind of thing. And this is actually the only thing that ever got me into poetry magazines. East African proverbs. Let the relentless fist be kissed. The salt cannot be cooked. The past is overlooked. Full once they nibble, fleas quibble. Teeth in a hyena's face always slide into place. No donkey can cart what weighs down your heart. Outside, a man is respected. At home, that man is neglected. The strangers weep and leave. Family members grieve. Even half-blind men hope to see again. True words end, lies extend. And that led to this. Proposed cliches. Softer than an old potato, too moldy to mash. More user-friendly than a hooker hard up for cash. Love is like a hard time sentence, but better than cancer. Ask not what your country can do for fear of the answer. Beauty beheld is merely skin deep. Infections are deeper. The price of honesty is steep. Candidates are cheaper. A drowning man may clutch at straws, but his sipping is pathetic. Burn the candle at both ends if you want to wax poetic. You can call off your dogs, but your cats will ignore you. If actuaries had wings, they still would just bore you. An apple a day keeps the doctor away, but not your disease. Blood is thicker than water, except when they freeze. It's all spilt milk under the bridge, so don't be big babies. If you're crazy like a fox, get tested for rabies. Let's see. I've lost track of time here.
I know.
All right, I don't want to run over. All right, let me skip that. Oh yeah, I guess I'll just do these two and then close. And this is a translation of Rimbaud, who had this remarkable meteoric career, sort of became a star and then moved away to Africa, never to write poetry again, apparently, before he was 20. And this is a poem of his called The Minx. In the paneled dining room, imbued with fruits and varnish, I, without a care, pick a plate of dicey Belgian food and amuse myself in my huge chair. Glad and shy while I'm eating it, time ticks by. Kitchen doors blow open with a gust. Then this servant blows in, I don't know why. Kerchief loose, hairdo coily mussed. And while her quaking pinky slides down her pale orange pink cheek with velvet down as she's pouting like a 3-year-old. Tight in to lull me, she sets plates out. Then like that, to get a kiss no doubt, whispers, feel right here, my cheek is cold. And that led to this, and also I stole from my own proverb, so it's okay. Rimbaud and Abyssinia. And the epigraph is teeth in a hyena's face always slide into place, or a Romo proverb. Harar. Like syphilitic sores, time runs down to crust. Vultures dawdle in the haze. Between seasons for trading slaves or guns, he doctors his accounts. It takes him days to capture everything. 1 zebra skin, 12 Remingtons, and 50 rosaries. Receipts, expenses, fluctuations in exchange rates, livestock, men lost to disease. The Paris literati chase down trails of sex and words he mocks as juvenile. Fearful of Muslim blades and Belgian jails, he stashes phoning letters in a file beside thick ledgers documenting sales. Alone, he flashes that hyena's smile. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're gonna close with a cluster of folks curated and edited by Danielle Legros Georges, who's an anchor of our community here. And I can't even count how many of these have you been in. You've been so generous with your work, with your own work, with your translations in our last issue, and in this time she curated a whole section of humorous poetry. And we're super excited to have that in here. If you don't know who Danielle is, where you been? She's an incredible poet and translator. Has lived in this town for a long time. As my favorite book that I've just recently read is Letters from or to Congo. From I got it right the first time. She's got a great book of translations that you folks published. Ida Faubert, if I'm pronouncing that right, and an incredible new book that is here, which I really see as a bookend. Not that it's the end, because you're keeping going like crazy. To a couple of years ago, she edited a great anthology of contemporary Boston poets. And this one is a funky anthology called Wheatley at 250, which celebrates Phyllis Wheatley's 250th. But it's a whole bunch of area and poets from all over the place who are sort of reinterpreting and re-echoing her work for all of us today, but also paying homage to the past. It's an incredible book, and she's got a copy of that over here. But she was super generous this time, not to publish her own work, not to publish her own translations, but to say, hey, I want to find some folks who can get us out of the darkness and make us laugh and make us smile, and curated a whole section in this issue of humorous poetry. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Hopefully read something about you, and share a few mystery poets with us, who, as I referred to them at the last gig.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you, Kevin, as always, for including me in these wonderful projects and these wonderful issues of spoKe. I'm gonna lower the mic a little bit? Yeah.
So this one.
Oh, so while that's
Hold
happening,
on.
While that's happening, I just want to mention that the Weekly at 250 book is published by Pangyris, one of whose editors, Cheryl, is here and has read. So I'm really happy about that collaboration. So when Kevin invited me to curate a special section for this volume of spoKe back in the fall of 2022, that's how long issues take. In general, among the many issues we were facing as poets and self-avowed global citizens were the effects of a worldwide pandemic and its devastating consumption of so many lives. The rescinding of federal protection of abortion rights in the US, boo hiss, a war against Ukraine, a deeply compromised state in Haiti that made life extremely difficult for many Haitians. Deadly conflicts raging around the world, accompanied by their creation of large numbers of internally displaced individuals and refugees, and an existential threat to the human species that is the global warming of the planet, among other worries. So how were we and we poets carrying on in the face of such events and in a world that could be frustrating, crushing, or even inconceivable at times? How do we manage the weight of such concerns and do literature? Right? This perennial question, how do we do art in the face of devastation and disaster? What were some of our tools in addition to and beyond the important tools of witness and documentation, beyond lament? The use of humor struck me as a powerful response and a vital and often underestimated form of human knowledge. Whether employed darkly and magnificently in the most awful situations, in wry, analytic ways, wickedly or raucously as a celebration of life. I was interested in the opposite of tragedy, in the many forms of jesting, of protesting, in the way humor can transgress boundaries of decorum and propriety. So to explore this topography, I reached out to a few handfuls of poets I knew or suspected would be willing to engage the question of comedic expression in and through poetry. Not necessarily poetry, haha, but there was that too. I was interested in how they considered incongruity, surprise, the absurd, how they might or viewed irony, double entendres, how they might use them, parody, and the understated and overstated, serving inquiry, poetic inquiry, and revelation. And one word I haven't mentioned yet is fun. What might be the value of that? So I'm grateful to each of the poets whose work appears in this section, and I'm going to list them. 4 of whom are in the room are going to read this evening, and so happy about that, and some of whom are in the Zoom room. So Indran Amirsana Yagam, Sharon Amaguni, Jennifer Barber, Daniel Bouchard, Linda Carney Goodrich, Chen Chen, Susan Donnelly, Wendy Drexler, Magdalena Gomez, Holly Gurin, Natasha Labaz, Gavin Moses, Melissa Peters, and H. Preston Sauce. I'm especially happy to have the work of Anne Reisenberg, whose witty visual juxtapositions serve as section heads for the groupings of poems presented in the issue. And I just want to show one of them to you. Depend and deep end. Oh, here, if you can see that. And then she has several others, which are I found just delightful and so thoughtful. So I'm going to read to you brief bios of our readers tonight, just one-liners, and who will read in the order in which I read their bios. Linda Carney Goodrich has a first and long overdue book, Dot Girl, whoop, whoop, which has just been published by Nix's Mates Books. It is just a beautiful book. Get it. Sharon Amaguni is a poet and visual artist who works in paper mache and paper arts. She is currently a MASS MoCA, Museum of Contemporary Art grantee. No small thing. Wendy Drexler is a recipient of a 2022 fellowship from the Massachusetts Cultural Council, also no small thing, and poet in residence at the new Mission High School in Hyde Park. And Danielle Bouchard has a most recent book, Spider Drop, published by Subpress. He's also a publisher and works in publishing at MIT. So I'm really happy to have our 4 contributors this evening, and get a copy of spoke 10 for the remaining contributors whose work I think is really wonderful. So Linda Carney Goodrich.
Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I was having a memory of my first time coming into this shop when I was in high school in the 80s, and I was terrified, and it was dusty, and there was someone very cranky, and I wondered whether or not I belonged and rushed out thinking maybe I didn't. But I've had a long time to rethink that. Danielle, thank you for the invitation to submit some poems, and I'm convinced this poem I'm about to read would not have a home if it weren't for this issue. Astonish. There will be a time when you will color your hair bright orange and act like a fool. Better to do this now. You can join the circus, or at least join the midlife women's circus summer camp. You could learn to ride a unicycle on the tightrope. You could have an affair with the lion tamer and the bearded lady. Go on a retreat, howl at the moon while sitting naked with 12 crones on the beach. Call them your disciples and write your holy book. Come home with damaged vocal cords or not come home at all. You can learn to hang glide while you still can feel what it is to fly. You could fix your face. Don't you want to fix your face? Today, you are the youngest you will ever be. You could learn Russian, backpack Europe. You know how to survive. You've proven that. You can live on air and raindrops, skinny dip naked, and hug trees. Why don't you get a tattoo and sleep with strangers? You could get lice from hostel beds, journal about it, and perform it at slams. Wouldn't you love to join a biker gang and try your first hit of acid? You are a golden beam of light that has not yet touched land. Let secret parts of yourself out of the dark.
Hello, thank you again to Danielle and to Kevin and to all the poets today. What a wonderful way to spend the first day of spring, although it doesn't feel like it. Mother Nature has a sense of humor, but it's really great to be here. This poem is titled, Thank God It's. And also, I realized I didn't say earlier, my name is Sharon Amaguni. What did you even laugh about in the TGI Fridays parking lot? Showy as you shuttled a gloss soggy cigarette between you, bellies already swashing with Long Island iced tea, nips clinking against the house keys and the Sears purse you got for Christmas. Inside, your laughs ricochet, all of you too drunk for anyone's good, not quite whispering about the boys you met or are meeting, or have always known in the archives of your baby lives, buzzed and giddy with the adolescence of it all. Before you learn how to sop up the whir of rum under the callous lights of a strip mall, before you learn that childhood unfolds like a fitted sheet, always caught in itself, you learned these simple joys as street remedy for the house where a pot of tea brown as sap is overboiling and your parents are in their bedroom, quarreling about visas and citizenship, how a state you lost every baby tooth in still sees you as a foreign mass. Tonight, you are grateful for the secrets of girlhood, bad jokes, the scent of nicotine. You're thankful to sneak into your house without waking any worn sleepers, lightly stumble down the stairs, clipping the tail of a woozy laugh. The room dark and day softened, you momentarily as American teen as you can be. Thank you, and thank you again to Danielle.
Hello, everybody. What a rich evening this is. Thank you, Danielle, for soliciting these poems. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, James, for hosting. This is called Clover Food Lab, which has a number of branches in the Boston area. I don't know if there are other branches beyond Massachusetts, but the food is pretty good. Clover Food Lab. This place is as spotless as a chemistry lab. Not one dirty dish in sight, not one crumb as the barista pours a scoop of ice into my plastic cup, which rests beneath a silver metal frame that holds a paper-lined gold filter. He's trickling hot water meticulously over the grounds of my decaf pour-over iced coffee. 4 or 5 passes, but it's the slowness I crave, the waiting for this coffee, and I bet the black, gray, and white speckled counter is made of an environmentally friendly, non-toxic composite. I've had a hell of a day, and while I wait, I marvel at the tidy displays, bags of roasted beans, the El Salvadorian Monte Carlos, the Costa Rican Terrazzo, each color-coded, printed label, curated like an exhibit at MoMA. It's the order I crave, away from the books piled so high they sway beside my bed, the stacks of New York Times, the checkbooks I've hidden from my husband and don't know how to tell him, the 3 times today he's asked what day today is. It's the sinuous shape of the 4 beakers lined up on the counter I want, with the right pulp of pureed juice waiting to be mixed with sparkling water. Actually, I want everything here. This stainless steel stove, the covered cauldrons of chickpea fritters, the unblemished white tile, the minimalist, blonde good looks of the designer chairs, as if we have all day to be at our best. I want the pesto breakfast bowl with organic Longwind Farm, lowercase, tomatoes. I clutter up lunch with capital letters. A soft-boiled egg and massaged kale. I want a massaged back and a massaged mind. For dessert, I'll want the egg-free, peanut-free, soy-free, milk-free, wheat-free pistachio halva. I'm going to walk out of here scot-free and easy as a newborn babe who's played all day in clover. Thank you.
I've asked Linda to take a couple of square pictures of me for my Instagram. I've never read at the Grolier before. I've been here for like 30 years. Not here, but in Boston. And I didn't bring my own copy, so I gotta find my page here. I met with Danielle recently for coffee, and I said, thanks so much for publishing my poems, because I have 3 in here. I said, no one else was ever going to publish those. And she's like, thanks a lot. But what I meant was, it kind of underscores the success of her selection. Because they are humor, but they're not ha-ha humor. They're not Edward Lear or Ogden Nash. Let me say, I mean, one is a parody that one makes fun of Ezra Pound in my town, kind of like being grand in my town, and uses some of his lines and some anecdotes in a parody that, which if you don't know Pound, it's all lost. Another one is about or you know, what basically is a mummy at a museum rising out of the wall and singing a few lines from The King and I. And the other one is a little ode to my typewriter, which, you know, if you had approached me with like the introduction that you wrote for this, saying like in times of war and social repression and just environmental failure, we need humor, I would have been like, I'm out. So let's counter all that dread and despair with a little poem to my typewriter. It's called Lines of Type, and it's supposed to evoke linotype, the linotype machine of the mid-20th century. This is an appliance. Shall I continue to park it here for occasional use, or free up 2 square feet by its absence? Writing is an appliance. I need a physical book now to finish the line of Bernadette stuck in my head. Writing poems is really dumb, but fuck it. Dragging thought, crashing sound down, up, or over. I cannot pick lines up and wing them into cloud. I cannot actually do anything with this writing before digitizing the text. The correcting selectric hums with a heavy patience that vibrates on the desk. I salute the impetus of switching it on. Arrogant laptop nearly slips into my coat now like an envelope. Many machines got tossed into Marx's dumpster of history, a bin that holds mountains of art as well. This keyboard pressing is an ode to value. This hulking ribbon winder is a tossback to the notion that one cannot toggle to headlines or shopping, or obliterate the why I keep making when tea is meant. I need music now to overpower the hammer strikes and relentless noise that reminds me of the electric current necessary to work. I tap into the digital ether where the bass nudges a melody and reanimates a voice in my ears, finished long ago. Ta-da!
Hey, thanks DLG and to all you folks, and there are a bunch of others, so please make sure you get a copy. I should say that in each issue, I've also feel like we need to celebrate other poets, and so I have a whole section of essays in each issue, and there's a bunch of great ones. In this one, there's an essay by Mark Pollock, or a real memoir on Etheridge Knight. There's a new book that celebrates his work. I mentioned the Barbara Lewis memoir about Ed Bullins. And Peter Valente, who's been in a bunch of these issues, is translations of the Greek and the Latin. Interestingly, he's got a great essay in here called Notes on the Boston Occult School. And it's a review, excuse me, it's a I made a typo here, man, shit. It's about Garrett Lansing and others, and then he also had, there's 2 things, there's 2 essays. No, I didn't make a typo, I just forgot. So he's got 2 essays here. One of them is on Garrett Lansing and that whole tradition and what he's dubbing the Boston Occult School, which is really interesting. And then a review of the correspondence that just came out of Bernadette Meyer and Clark Coolidge. We've got a review of Elizabeth Lund's new book of poems called Unsilenced, which is a riveting book. A review of Tony Trigilio, who lived here a long time ago, but sort of a friend of our extended family. And a great review by May Reed Byrne of John Mulrooney's great new book called Spooky Action. So read those reviews, get those books. A number of the books of the poets that have read tonight are up and around here and probably around here, and we've got copies of spoKe. But can't end without, after thanking all the poets that read tonight, without thanking James for the great gigs that you put on here. It's an honor to be part of the long tradition, and thanks for keeping it alive. Thanks for you folks for sticking with us out there in Zoom line. Happy spring, as you said. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you to all the editors and all the participants tonight. Let's give you guys another round of applause. Thank you all for coming. We have books for sale. Poets will be signing books. If everyone could please put your chair up against one of the walls, I would be grateful. Thank you.